Let's talk about USA Basketball, which is entering the Olympics in a very interesting situation. They just completed their exhibition tour on Monday. They beat Germany in that game. Close game down the stretch. They're actually down a point with about 4 minutes to play before LeBron James went supernova again and carried them through it. Officially, Mark, they went 5-0 during this exhibition tour. They won by an average of 10 points per game. But if you look at the last two games, they won by 1 point against South Sudan. They won by, 5 points or 4 points against Germany. And they're not really going into these Olympics with momentum. They do have convincing wins over two medal favorites in Canada and Serbia, so they can hang their hat on that. But the defense has kind of been hit or miss. The shooting has been hit or miss. The turnovers have been bad. Look, they play like a team that was thrown together in just a couple of weeks' time. And even though they, came together months and months ago, it was just, a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, that they were in training camp in Las Vegas. So, give me your state of USA Basketball right now. You were in Vegas for their training camp, and when you saw them play in their exhibition game, is this what you expected, going into the Olympics? A team that, is still the favorite, no doubt about it, but maybe less a favorite now than they were after that game against Canada.
Yeah, there's the way I would put it, and I'll unpack it more in depth. It feels like this is a choose your own adventure type book where there's a lot of different scenarios that can happen here. I did anticipate. I mean, obviously, we all know, Chris, the international games been a lot more competitive. You've written the definitive feature piece on South Sudan on how they've made themselves into a formidable program.
Thank you, South Sudan, for making the magazine story hold up. I appreciate you, Lou Aldang, and all you folks at South Sudan.
No doubt. I did not anticipate Kevin Durant being out for this long with his left calf. Now, Steve Kerr and USA Basketball will continue to say he's day-to-day. His return is imminent. He has done some individual work, but the longer he's out, the more concerns that is. And obviously, he's Kevin Durant. I mean, Ty Lue, I remember, and I think other players have since said this, but when I was at USA camp in Vegas, Ty Lue emphatically made the point, if it wasn't for Kevin Durant, we wouldn't have won gold in Tokyo. I mean, that's how important he is. So even when
Definitely.
you have LeBron James, Steph Curry, obviously a lot of great future Hall of Fame players on the team, he is that important to it. But I didn't expect that they would be barely beating South Sudan and Germany, but I also didn't expect that they would be coasting to double-digit wins where, every game like it was against Serbia would be the norm. I thought it'd be somewhere in between. So what that means moving forward, I still think USA is going to win gold. If they don't win gold, obviously disappointment, but I'm just of this mind, anything could literally happen. And while I am continuously impressed that LeBron James is doing what he's doing at this stage of his career, it also isn't a good sign that he's having to play almost the same way he's had to play for the Lakers in recent years, but with Team USA. So even though, Steve Kerr's having different rotations, they've had the turnovers, Joel Embiid, I think, has shown, both pluses and minuses with adjusting to the FIBA game. That shouldn't fully explain why it's as this fragile as it is, but I'm also not holding up the giant red flag saying they're not going to win gold.
I'm not holding up the red flag, but I've got it locked into the flagpole ready to pull at any moment because the problems they had are pretty consistent. Now, sometimes a 3-point shot doesn't fall down or doesn't go down. 14 turnovers against South Sudan, 14 turnovers in 40-minute games. That's a big number against Germany. They're sloppy. They don't have great chemistry. And you watch some of these international teams like Germany, the reigning world champions, South Sudan, who has a group of guys been together for a pretty long time, comparatively speaking, to the U.S., and they run offenses. I'm watching the U.S., and it's a lot of high pick and roll. It's a lot of low to mid post. It's a lot of isolation. And look, that works in the NBA, but with these FIBA rules where there's no illegal defense, where you can knock the ball off the rim, we get a whole bunch of different things, it's more difficult. it's more challenging. So look, the Durant part of it, I want, how shocked, this was billed, Mark, as a minor injury back in early camp. It was like, no big deal. Nothing to see here. He'll be back at some point. Misses the entire exhibition slate. And I was watching on ESPN, Brian Windhorst effectively ruled him out for Sunday's game against Serbia. Like, he's out there saying, like, almost a week from now, Kevin Durant is not going to be ready to play. So really, best case scenario, you're dropping Durant onto a team that he's only had a handful of practices with, hasn't played in a real game with, going up against teams that are, sharp and are, that are good. And we've seen during these international games, like, my God, like, Dennis Schroeder is a journeyman at this point. He's been on 5 teams in the last 3 years. That is the definition of a journeyman. All of a sudden, he turns into an MVP playing in international play. Like, Evan Fournier with France couldn't get off the bench with the Knicks for 2 years. He's Steph Curry, international play. Like, these games are different. These players play differently. There's a level of passion that they play with in international basketball that doesn't exist with USA basketball. USA players want to win NBA championships. They need to win NBA championships. I don't know how much they need to win Olympic gold. Like, not as badly as some of these international teams do. And that closes the talent gap. Like, there's a huge talent gap. Like, the team from Germany, how many games would that team win in the NBA? Like 5? Like, maybe? Like, it would get killed in the NBA. But they play with a fluidity and they play with a passion that the U.S. just had a hard time keeping up with. So, yeah, I'm kind of at sort of yellow alert now, to borrow an old Star Trek phrase. Like, I'm kind of right there with the, group play. I think they'll be okay in. I think they'll play better against the South Sudans of the world in group play. I think they already played well against Serbia. But you get to that knockout round, Mark, I don't know, man. Like, without LeBron James, they would be entering this Olympics on a 2-game losing streak. And what would we be talking about then? Like, how big a catastrophe would that be?
No, it would be terrible. And to your point, with Kevin Durant and chemistry and how do you build a rhythm, I think the complicated part about this is I don't have any concern about how he's going to fit in. He's plug and play. He's Kevin Durant. But I have a lot of concern on what his rhythm is going to be, as well as if he's going to have another injury. And I do caution listeners, I'm not saying these are the same kind of injuries or same potential scenarios, but we all know when he came back from his calf injury in the 2019 NBA Finals, that same game, Achilles injury. And that game, you may recall, Chris, when he played, it was like he didn't miss a beat. He was Kevin effing Durant hitting every single shot, and then all of a sudden something happened. So that's really, I think, the touchy part is to what you were saying. From the very beginning, the messaging is that this injury is minor, day to day, but he hasn't played any exhibition games. We know Kevin Durant's injury history since his Achilles in 2019. This is, I don't want to say precarious, but it does leave me concerned about what his return will look like, not from a chemistry production standpoint, but from a health standpoint.
Look, and this is a crossroads moment for USA basketball, right? Like, they were able to kind of reassemble Voltron in part because LeBron, got active with recruiting players last fall after the debacle of the World Championship. So they were able to put together the best they could assemble, some of the best players, most of the best players in the U.S. But moving forward, they're probably not going to be able to do that, right? Like, it's going to be challenging to put together that type of team. I've seen some people on social media be like, just send the Celtics, send the NBA champion. Well, if you sent the Celtics, you wouldn't get Porzingis, you wouldn't get Al Horford. Like, there'd be key players that you wouldn't have.
You'd at least get Jaylen Brown, though.
Yeah, that would eventually get Jaylen Brown there. You're right. But like, to me, regardless of how this tournament ends, the U.S. needs to change the way it builds its national team. It needs to get, just like Jerry Colangelo did years and years ago, multi-year commitments. Like, you need to get a bunch of guys, and maybe they're not the best players in the world. Maybe you're talking about, a handful of all-stars, all-star candidate types, some young players. You need to get guys participating in international games in the summer of 2025, 26, 27, all leading into the Olympics. So you can start to develop some chemistry with the players, with the coaching staff, with all that, because just throwing a bunch of great players together does not work anymore. They might get away with it this cycle because the players are that good. And if Durant comes back, he's going to be a difference maker. But long term, it's not going to work. The world is too freaking good. South Sudan just became a country 13 years ago, and they almost beat USA Basketball. Like, think about that. They've got 4 guys on that team that have NBA playing experience, and none of them are all-stars. So the world, it's caught up, and it's a different stage that you have to play on. I think one way or the other, they've got to change the way they build their national team moving forward.
Yeah, and there's some interesting things with this, because I agree with your point that the novelty of winning a gold medal, it's stronger with other teams. But I will say that no one with USA Basketball wants to be associated with any team that doesn't win gold.
No.
You can recall the 2004 team that finished with bronze. I think when you look at this team in particular, obviously LeBron James, Steph Curry, and if Kevin Durant ever returns, they're the faces of the team. But I think it's safe to say this is their last Olympic run. But with exception to Kevin Durant, we haven't seen the kind of continuity that we saw with other generational stars in the past with LeBron and Steph. This is Steph's first Olympic run. He did not play in previous years. 2016, coming off injuries in the finals. 2021, he felt like he needed to, recharge and get himself healthier after that compressed post-bubble season. And that was the same thing with LeBron. So even though we've seen LeBron and Steph play really well, their potential value hasn't been as strong as it could have been, because this is literally their first time together, not only with each other, but with this respective group. I think the other point that you made as far as that continuity, we have some of those potential players in place. I think Jason Tatum and Anthony Edwards come to mind that, they are coming off of Team USA experience. Jason Tatum in particular, he's already played with the Olympics. I see them having multi-year stints in this, but I can't think of other examples. I
don't know, Mark, but I actually think I've seen Edwards comments from him say he's down to play in the next Olympics, but not before then. And I believe I'm on steady ground here thinking that Tatum's not going to do it either. Like Tatum, especially being on a team like Boston that is probably going to be playing deep into the, late spring months for the next couple of years. I doubt he's going to want to turn around and start playing, international friendlies in Serbia or, go to the World Cup in 2027. I don't think he's going to do that. I think they've got to look further down the depth chart there and start looking at guys that ambitiously want to be part of Team USA, that if it was open to everybody to do whatever they want, they wouldn't be part. And I'm not saying I think Peyton Pritchard might be too far down the totem pole, but in that area, just get guys that want to play. 12, 15 guys, whatever it is, that want to play, few alternates, and see what you can do that way, because this is not sustainable. What they're doing is simply not sustainable on a championship level.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, to the larger point is that those were only the 2 potential examples. There is a short pool, not just of potential FIBA players, but also potential Olympic players. And I think that one thing to point out when you look at the 08-12 team, it's not like those headliners were playing in the FIBA World Championships in 10 and 14, but there was, to what you said, a multi-year commitment with both sides of the program, where that ensured continuity. That also ensured a feeder system for the players that did really well in 2010-14. There was a pathway for them to be on the Olympic roster. And when you're looking at the headliners as well as the second tier players, we're running out of players. And part of that's the global part of the game. Some of the future and current faces of the NBA, like Victor Wembanyama, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, they're playing internationally. But it's also, I think, this point in time where the current faces of the NBA with LeBron and Durant and Steph, they're about to be on their way out, at least from, the Olympic calendar standpoint.
And guys like Giannis and Jokic and Doncic, they're not playing every cycle either, but
Right.
Most of their teammates are, right?
100.
Like they've got like 8 or 9 guys that are consistently part of that national team. So yeah, you've got to adapt to throwing a player like Giannis into the mix, but that's a lot easier than having 12 guys that never played together, do that. So yeah, I think for Grant Hill moving forward, regardless of what happens during these Olympics, I think there's going to be a fundamental change to how they build out that roster.